Hello everybody, welcome back. This is the second video that I am doing in kind of this series on kind of depersonalization, derealization, anxiety, that kind of thing. So, the first video I did, if you didn't already catch that, it's just kind of an overall introduction, just briefly about me, some stuff about me and my experience with the whole thing. This video, I wanted to focus more on ways that I have kind of learned to cope with depersonalization and derealization, and hopefully pass that on to you, and hopefully you'll find it useful in your journey and your growth. So again, let me just say, not a medical professional. The degrees that I hold are not in psychology or anything like that, so I'm not a therapist. So, you know, consult your doctor if you have one. Get a doctor if you don't, you need one. And as always, if you feel like harming yourself or somebody else, call the appropriate authorities and don't go that drastic, irreversible route. So, all right. So now that we've got all that there, so I think that in order to understand some of these techniques and these strategies for kind of dealing and coping with this, it's important to understand kind of what's occurring with this depersonalization and derealization. So I conceptualize it sort of, I think, as I briefly mentioned in the first video, I conceptualize it sort of like almost like your consciousness or your spirit or whatever you want to call it. It almost feels like it's kind of like separating from your body. And if you deal with this, you'll probably kind of understand that. So, right, you have a situation where either real or perceived, your mind seems to be doing something drastically different from your body, and it feels like they're disconnected in some way. That's I think the basis of what we're looking at here, in whatever form that might take, consciousness or, you know, whatever, right? So having said that, what I've come to realize in terms of dealing with this then is that you obviously, you need to find a way to link those two back up, right? It's like, you know, you can almost think of it like if you're in a truck and you're towing a trailer, and that trailer like comes off the hitch and is just being drug along by, you know, the brake wires that are hooked up there. Obviously the solution there is, you know, to kind of like stop and then go back there and re-hitch it, make sure it's secured down, right? And so I kind of think of this as sort of the same thing. The mind, the consciousness, whatever, needs to be sort of reconnected and then anchored down, right? Some ways that I've done that, essentially I think of, you'll hear a lot of people talk about like doing breathing exercises and stuff, right? The theory behind that is that when you're doing breathing exercises and you're concentrating on your breathing, essentially what you're doing is you have the body that's breathing, and then you have the mind that's focusing on the breathing, and what you're doing is you're aligning them through that practice, right? So I say that to say that breathing exercises can be a good way. All right, so I'll just briefly touch on that. The key things in doing some sort of breath exercise is you want to breathe in like in a metered pace, right? So some sort of numerical count accompanying your breathing. So like when you breathe in, count to 5 slowly, and then breathe out or exhale and count to 5 slowly, right? And then you also want to make sure that you're breathing in your tummy. So don't breathe in your shoulders, but, you know, breathe down here, like diaphragm breathing, as they say. And essentially, you're doing a lot of different things just in this simple exercise. As I mentioned, the focus matching up with the breathing is going to kind of harmonize the mind and the body, right? So you're doing that reconnection. And then you're also calming the body, because rhythmic breathing, like when human beings go to sleep, right? Your breathing slows and it becomes more rhythmic. So essentially what you're doing is you're consciously mimicking the breath that you would be doing when you're sleeping, which sends a message to the entire body to relax and chill out. So especially if you're feeling anxiety, like I experience a lot of anxiety up to panic attacks from this depersonalization and derealization thing. It's an uncomfortable feeling for me a lot of the time. So this kind of breathing can also help with that if that's something you're experiencing. And then the third thing there is that breathing in your tummy is another signal to your body. It signals your nervous system to relax, right? You'll hear people say that breathing in your chest and your shoulders is like fight or flight breathing. And it's telling your body, be tense, get ready for action, that kind of thing. Well, breathing down in your tummy sends the opposite message, right? It signals everything's okay, like baby belly breathing, as they say, if you watch a baby's belly. So that is kind of one way that you can reconnect or harmonize the mind and the body again, all right? Other things, Tai Chi. I can't say enough about Tai Chi. Like, I gotta say that is one of the most unbelievable exercises that you can do, in general for your well-being, but in particular, I think that if you are dealing with this depersonalization, derealization thing, Tai Chi is just phenomenal. It is slow, easy, rhythmic movements that coincide with breath. It's like a more complicated, a more advanced version of just the breathing, right? So like if you are in a social situation and you feel, the depersonalization, derealization thing coming on, you might not be able to stand up and do Tai Chi. You might have to focus just on the breath thing, or, if you're in other situations like that. But if you're just at home, or even better, if it's something you experience on a regular basis, do Tai Chi every day. You don't have to do a ton of it. For me, I find sometimes I can do it for 5 minutes and I can tell a huge difference. The best way that I can describe how it feels for me is that same uncomfortable feeling that you get when you start feeling separated from yourself. Tai Chi, for me, feels like the exact opposite. It feels like my mind and my body are so harmonized, and it creates a very strong sense of calm and unity within yourself. So you can find a lot of videos on YouTube, Qigong, Tai Chi sort of beginner videos. That's what I do. I just, sit in my living room and just go along. So Tai Chi, I really recommend that one. I'd also recommend like yoga, because it's kind of essentially the same thing. But if you've never done yoga, it can be a little bit more difficult just because it's more into stretching and there's some strength required and stuff like that. And so it might be a little bit more difficult with yoga to just simply try to focus on, getting your mind where you need it and want it to be. So if you're already doing yoga, I don't know, maybe you're already seeing the benefits, but you can try it. But Tai Chi is a little bit easier to get into, I feel like. So yeah. And then, okay, so those are some ways to harmonize mind and body, which in my observation, observing myself and thinking about all this, I think that's kind of the first step, because you've got to get to square one, right? Or square zero, rather. You've got to get to the baseline, the level, before you can really go on from there, all right? So once you're at that point, right? Either you've got yourself to your baseline, or you're having an all right day or an all right week. You're not really dealing with it, but you deal with it intermittently or frequently. That's where we come to the next thing, okay? The next thing that I want to talk about, I call them anchors, okay? Again, I experience this like almost like a separation within myself. And when you hear people talking about dealing with this, you hear a lot of like, I'm observing myself, that kind of thing, right? So as I've thought about this, especially over the years before I even knew what this was, I kind of started to figure out that I needed to anchor my mind down, right? I needed to tether to something so that this wouldn't occur, or it wouldn't occur so intensely. All right, so when I say anchor, what I'm saying is you've got to figure out some way for yourself to anchor yourself in reality, or you have to figure out a way to tether yourself to reality, because the reality is that we are ourselves, right? This is, I'm sure as many of you know, this stuff can be very hard to articulate and verbalize, right? So it comes off sounding weird to say like we are ourselves and the world around us is real, right? But I think you understand what I'm saying. And so you have to figure out a way to tether yourself to those truths, right? Truth is important if you're dealing with depersonalization and derealization. I can't even begin to in a short YouTube video really say how important truth is, because that's fundamentally in a lot of ways what you're dealing with, is you start to not be able to distinguish between the truth, which is you are you and the world around you is real, and the falsehood, which is the feelings that we get and the experience, right? We tend to think that experience is always truth. Anyways, like I say, that requires a lot more than just a short YouTube video. But the point being, an anchor is something that will keep you grounded, as the name would imply. It's something that would keep you grounded, okay? Whereas a tether is going to be something more like, if you've ever seen a rock climber or someone climbing, a cliff or something like that, and they have like the carabiners and they nail the things into the wall, and then they have the line attached to themselves. That's basically a tether, right? And it's the same concept. You want to do the same thing, right? As you're climbing this cliff, you want to periodically tether yourself into the face of this cliff, so that if you do lose your grip, right, you don't fall all the way. You fall a safe distance and don't die or seriously hurt yourself. So a tether is something where if you start experiencing the depersonalization or derealization, it's something that you can kind of hold on to and kind of pull yourself back in, okay? So an example of an anchor, I guess I would say, really, I guess like a mantra could really be like an anchor or a tether. But you have to figure out and focus on truth, and then base your tether and your anchor on truth, and really leverage truth in this situation. Because especially when you start feeling that separation, or that the world around you isn't real, truth starts to get to be a slippery thing. And I suspect, based on my experience and my observation, that a lot of the anxiety and the panic stems from feeling like you're losing your grip on the truth, all right? And that can create a lot of panic, right? You don't know if you're real, you don't know if the world around you is real, you've just drifted into this land that's something very, very different, Okay. Anyways, okay, well, I'm going to cut it off there. That's the general picture of what I wanted to talk about in this video. And if you have any questions or anything, comments, whatever, ideas, I don't know, what's worked for you? What are you doing? Leave them in the comments. One of my goals with all this and even doing these videos and starting to talk about this is generating awareness. I have gone for like decades without knowing what the hell this is, right? And that sucks. That's like adds a whole nother layer onto the crappiness of this experience, right? So part of my goal actually in the long term is generating awareness about this, because there's got to be other people that are dealing with this that have no idea what they're dealing with, and their lives are just worse because of it, right? So let's generate discussion, generate community, generate communication, and try to make everybody's lives better. Anywho, next video coming up that I'm gonna try and do right now is going to be on how this experience can actually be beneficial and some things that you can take away from it that are good, because it's not all negative. So I will see you there.